I don't.
Good day, everyone. James Hicks here from Hicks New Media. Welcome to Perspective in Focus, where we highlight the people, the industries, ideas, and technology that are making positive strides within society. You know, as we wrap up Women's History Month, I wanted to maintain that focus of bringing premium content and discussions led and championed by women in society. My guests today have been in the C suite as chief executive officers of their respective companies. They've each had tremendous success and they've each had tremendous setbacks. One launched the first nationwide mass market distribution of consumer biometric products. The other was self-funded and gained great success for a 2-decade period developing skincare cosmetic products and distributing them through prestigious department stores and high-end spas and salons globally. We're not going to dwell on the negative, but we will bring some attention to it as we have a discussion about CEO lessons learned and having a responsible mindset while raising capital. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me bring on my guests for the evening. Lorraine, Yarde,
Hey James, how
Joy,
are you?
Chancis. How are you guys?
James,
We're doing
good to see you.
great, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the willingness to share this story with the community. I think, again, this is relevant, especially thank you for closing out Women's History Month with me, right? With two powerful women in industry. And I think that just resonates with where we're looking to go with higher level conversation and higher level content. I gave a little bit of a snippet to what you guys have done, right, from a business perspective. And I know that's not even the half of a paragraph in terms of what you've accomplished and what you're still accomplishing. But I always think it's better for each individual to tell kind of their own origin story, let's say, right? So, Joy, if you don't mind, let's start with you. We're going to go alphabetical. and Joy.
I always come last.
First question we'll bring to you, Lorraine. But Joy, can you just tell the folks who you are and just, again, like I said, that origin story. I love having individuals share that.
Yeah, I'm Joey Chancis. I started a company in 1993 when I was 19 years old, a beauty company where I formulated skincare products and sold them to prestige department stores all around the world, such as Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, Saks. I was on QVC for 15 years, all of it for over 2 decades. It was a privately held company that I self-funded, and on or about around 2013, the company did go public. I was convinced by the so-called, Wall Street whizzes to take the company public through a reverse merge and, scale the company and, do it that way. And ultimately, it didn't really work out. And we'll talk about that later.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Lorraine, tell the folks who you are.
Oh, where do I start? Well, let's get on the focus on the topic at hand.
Wait, say that one more time. Let's stay focused on you. I love that.
Right. So I've been involved in 2 public vehicles, 2 public companies. First one I co-founded in 2004, and we were innovators in the fingerprint biometric space. We were the first company to bring any kind of consumer biometric products to the US market. Before Apple and Samsung thought about putting biometrics on phones, we were putting it into garage door openers and front door locks, etc., safes, etc. We had partnerships deals with Masterlock, overhead door company. We sold through big box retailers, Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco, you name it. We were in all those channels. 2008 came and the market crashed, and our products were considered to be premium products compared to the typical access products that used a PIN code or a key. So that first company unfortunately lost funding. We then decided to take the technology into the medical space to provide added security and convenience in the medical space with medical devices. So I founded a company in 2010, which took the technology that we developed, or similar technology we developed in the prior company, and we filed our own Form 10 and S1 and went public that way. The first company we did a reverse merge. And as Joey mentioned, we had some success with both companies. With the latter company, similar situation to Joe's, we got involved in some, death spiral toxic lending deals, and unfortunately, kind of that put things on hold. However, we're coming back strong, and we'll talk about that a bit later.
I love that. I love that last piece right there. Coming back strong, regardless of whatever turmoil and turbulences you went through. And that's just life lessons. And I'm going to take advantage and utilize this time and this platform to really help folks who may be coming up behind you with what to look for, those pitfalls and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Folks in the community, if you have a question for the panel, please, like you see the scrolling ticker going up there, put a Q in front of it, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of engagement. I want to be able to highlight any specific questions you may have. Let's go ahead and get into it. How did you go from being a privately held company to a public company? Lorraine, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I think I mentioned it quickly in the introduction. Yeah. So the first company we founded, we actually did a reverse merge with an existing public shell, and we bought an operating business into a relatively clean public vehicle. The second time around, we actually self-underwrote the deal. We didn't have a investment banker underwrite it, but we were able to raise enough capital through friends and family. And we actually filed our own Form 10 and S1 and went public that way. So had experience in two different ways, both very challenging. But the second route was, I think, more preferable, because we were able to capitalize the company the way we wanted to, as opposed to the first route. We brought along some baggage with us through the reverse merge.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Joey, what about you? That's an interesting story. I may pivot off of my notes anyway, just to go into some of that right there. But Joey, talk to us a little bit about your side. How did you go from private to public?
Yeah, it is pretty interesting, and similar to Lorraine's situation. We did a reverse merge as well with a public shell. However, as a privately held company, that's, what I understood, that's what I knew. And and I refer to these Wall Street wizards because I don't want to name any names for a few reasons. But they were in my inner circle and I trusted them. And they, basically said I was at a time in the business where really wanted to take it to the next level, scale it, play with big boys and the big brands, and really, instead of just keep reinvesting and self-funding, to get access to capital markets, being public, to be able to raise enough money to grow the business quickly and efficiently. So it sounded like a great idea, and really, the way it was also presented to me is that as the CEO of the company, I can just continue to do what I was doing, which is building the business, growing the business, and managing the day-to-day business, while the Wall Street whizzes and the SEC accountants and the SEC attorneys and the PCAOB auditors, they're all going to handle all that stuff and, make sure that we're all current with the filings and, all these, nuances and very detail-oriented things that I really wasn't really aware of at the time. And so that happened, in about 2013. The company went public through the reverse merge, and we started looking to do some acquisitions. We started a new concept which was called Botox Beauty Labs, which we were building Botox beauty bars all around the country. We had opened up 4 of them at the time, and then we got involved with these toxic lenders who, as Lorraine and I talked about, really can destroy a company.
So let me ask you this, because I'm actually going to shuffle up the questions that I had right here. So folks that are watching, you're going to see question numbers that are going to be different. Is this something common? Right, just in terms of dealing with the folks that we're calling toxic lenders. I mean, obviously that's not on their business card. That's not on, in the yellow pages when you start engaging with them, where it's called. But just how do you end up being involved with someone like this? I mean, and again, no fault to anyone, but just again, how does one come to be within those circles and that circumstance to where your company gets tied up with the and again, we're not naming any names, but the folks that are within these types of circles. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. And again, this is from an educational perspective for CEOs, executives, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs coming up behind you so they can also avoid this pitfall. And you guys can chime in any kind of way you want to.
I mean, I'll take I'll take the floor. Okay, I'll go first, Joey. So essentially, on the OTC, right? So we're not talking about NASDAQ and those other types of exchanges, but on the OTC predominantly, it's extremely common for small public companies to fall prey to these Wall Street wizards. Again, let's call them that. Because it's difficult for small public companies to raise capital through the traditional route. So you can't get an investment bank traditionally to come in and underwrite any kind of race for you, because typically most public companies don't have the revenue, they don't have the positive cash flow, positive EBITDA to attract those, the investment bankers. Most of the times, they're either self-funded initially, or, they have friends and family or angel investors. Okay. But that only takes you so far. Right. And to Joey's point, you have all of these other things you have to do. You have to pay PCBOB accountants and, the attorneys and all sorts of things. And it's a very, very expensive proposition. And unless you've done it, you don't realize how expensive it is. So the money runs out real quick. That seed capital you get, either it's self-funding or family, friends, angel funding, runs out really, really quickly. And you get, as soon as you're public, you get knocked on the door. The door's knocking constantly. Your phone's ringing with these Wall Street wizards offering to raise you capital, right? Oh, we've got all these funds that raise money, very quick process. You can close in 3 or 4 days, and it sounds great, but they don't really go through the small print, right? So, they just give you the highlights, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to, agree to a discount to conversion on the stock, but don't worry, because you know what I mean? So this kind of, and then you get bombarded with, stacks and stacks of paperwork to do a deal.
And they expect you, they don't expect you to read it, right? So again, third person looking in here.
Yeah, most of the time not. No, right. But and honestly, I think it's designed that way, because they're flashing these dollars in front of you, right? 100,000, 200,000, whatever it might be, and you need the money to make payroll, to continue to keep the doors open, right? To keep your filings current, and it's like it's easy money, right? So you often overlook the small print. I mean, I'll admit that to start with. I mean, granted, my discounts were all relatively, I don't think they were that bad. They were I think the most we did was a 35% discount to market, right, in the deals.
Okay.
Right. And they tell you, don't worry, we're going to be gentle with the stock. We support the company. They ask you questions about the business, so you think that they're interested in the business, right? They want to know who you're selling to, who your prospects are, blah. Okay. And when it comes down to it, because they're getting that discount, they could actually make great money by being good lenders to the company, right? If they didn't correct convert and then tank the stock. But we should, I mean, it's there in front of us when we actually do the deal, but we overlook it. We have a note, we have a stock purchase agreement, 2 things that conflict each other. Why do we have a stock purchase agreement and a note together, right? But we sign them, don't we? We just sign them as CEOs because we want the money. We need the money. We've got to keep the business going.
Oh, see,
right. So it's like a rope-a-dope kind of situation where they kind of pull you in so far, you're kind of in, and then you have all these. You just, and I mean, it's like signing your life away. It's kind of a scary situation, and if you haven't got good legal counsel, honestly, even the attorneys in the OTC. I mean, I don't want to name names.
No, that's a great setup, though.
Most of them don't give you good advice.
Yeah.
But thank goodness there are some out there now that are, really trying to make a difference, make a change. But most of them will just say, yeah, it's fine. These are the normal deals. Yeah, the paperwork's fine. That's it. But they don't highlight the pitfalls.
So Joy, before I let you interject, I want to give 2 shouts out, because you 2 have drawn some rock stars into the community, into the audience. Everyone that's here is a rock star anyway in and of themselves. So appreciate everyone for being here. But Dr. Chandra, good to see you, sir. Glad you are in the building. Appreciate you. We'll be talking soon, I'm sure. And then you got this guy in the room, Passanante, right? So again, and coming from the organization that Gus is
Love
from, right? You think about where do you, and again, I'm going off of script here. Where do you engage with someone like a Basile law firm and to have these conversations? Is it unfortunately at that tail end when you've already been taken advantage of, or is that more of a conversation that you have at the beginning? Are there other lawyers that you have within your circle and your sphere of influence? And again, this is me, third person, looking and kind of asking selfishly the questions for myself. I'm sure other audience members have this question as well, but when and where could you bring in someone like a Gus Passanante to assist with looking at all of those shiny documents and they're just giving you the pen talking about sign them all right here?
Yeah.
I mean, I think every OT markets company should have counsel, just general counsel, that's always looking over your shoulder. It's really important. In my particular case, I was like far. I came across Mark Basile, the Basile law firm, and Gus. I was already a pro se defendant in one of the toxic lending litigation lawsuits. But I had researched Mark Basile. I did a tremendous amount of research, and I saw that he really specialized in this business and in this field in securities litigation. And it's very, very sophisticated. Not many attorneys really understand all the nuances of it. And I followed all of his cases, and I read all of them. I had conversations with him about broker-dealer issues and, the SEC cracking down on these types of lenders regarding the unregistered broker-dealer. I was also following Lorraine's case that Mr. Basile was representing in the Yarde Bays, and the success they had there and the win that they had there regarding criminal usury laws in New York. And right now, I'm actually following in their footsteps because of that decision, and it's looking pretty good.
Well, that's good news, right? Because a number of landmark. I'm using Gus and Mr. Brazil's wording. Number of landmark cases have been
Yes.
decided from that firm, so they know how to roll their sleeves up and take care of their clients. So appreciate that for sure. Let me go back to kind of the string of questioning here and say, I guess, and we may have already touched on this, but I'm just wondering if there's some more areas that you can elaborate on, right? Challenges of raising capital properly, effectively, from a long-term strategy perspective for small public companies. And then again, you guys can go in any about. So we started with Lorraine. I tell you what, Joy, let's start with you this time, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, so I think one of the challenges of a small public company is that to raise clean capital and to get institutional funding, because a lot of these, institutional funders do not want to invest in startups, and a lot of the OTC markets companies are they're just in research. They don't even have any revenues. I mean, I did have revenues and I did have a whole business model, but it was still challenging. And, again, I'm in a different, a rather unique situation. I think it might be a little different than Lorraine, but I really wasn't involved in the fundraising and getting the capital. Those were for the trusted Wall Street whizzes that I believed would be able to obtain the proper capital. So unbeknownst to me, they enter into these securities purchase agreements with these so-called toxic lenders, and who aren't really even allowed to be entering into securities purchase agreements anyway, because they're registered broker dealers. And then they make all these, complicated deals about, with these convertible notes, and they act like, as Lorraine said, they act like they're in this for the long haul, and they love the company, and they're really into this, the startups, and then they give you like tranches of money. They don't just like give you the amount of capital that you really need to build the business. They give you enough basically to hang yourself, and then with the promise of giving you more. And then really what ends up happening is after 180 days, they're allowed to, convert their shares. And meanwhile, we're thinking they're in it for the long haul, years and years down the road. And after 180 days, they're starting to convert and sell their shares, which they're selling at a discount. And not only are they selling at a discount, but they don't even have to disclose it to the public. So, after they convert these shares, the stock price obviously falls, and then they do it again and again and again, and that's where the death spiral comes into play. And then a stock price can go from $3 a share to sub penny, 0.002 within 6 months easily.
Oh, man.
And to Joey's point, they're selling aggressively at a discount. So what they do is after the 180 days, they don't convert the complete note. They convert a portion of the note. They sell at a discount, which drives the price down. Then they convert another portion of the note, and they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So to your question earlier, why is it difficult? Well, as soon as you get into one of those deals, like we entered into those transactions thinking, we're going to start to generate revenue. We're going to be able to pay them off. But what we ended up doing is taking the next deal to borrow from Peter to pay off Paul. And we just kept doing that until we dug such a big hole for ourselves. We couldn't get our way out of it. Right. So, now we have multiple toxic lenders that have reached their 180-day period, and they're now converting at discounts. And so we can't keep track of who's doing, where's all the selling coming from? Because as Joey said, they don't have to disclose. I mean, the OTC is somewhat of an unregulated, at least up until this point, an unregulated platform. Thankfully, now the SEC are coming in and they're cracking down on a lot of these types of transactions and these lenders, right? But it's like the wild west is probably the best way to describe it, because there really are no rules. And then you have the market makers that are in bed with these lenders, and then you get all the shorting of the stock, and it's just, again, that's where the death spiral comes in, because you don't do one deal, you do multiple deals, and they're all converting at a discount. And then let's say some of them have flaws in their conversion. Flaws, the stock price can't go below a certain amount, otherwise you end up with a default interest amount, right? So now, or default. So now you're not converting at a 35% discount, you're converting at a 50% discount to market, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
So check this out, folks. I mean, I want to pause, because I don't want this to just be glazed over and be assumed. Folks, and I put it in the comments right there, you are definitely getting a 201, 401 level education here behind the scenes. You're not going to get this on the news. You're not going to get this in a newspaper. You're not going to get this in a magazine. These ladies have been through the fire, have actually seen the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. And if you are in these situations or around these situations, hopefully you got your pen and paper out and taking some notes, because this is valuable information that you are not going to get from experiencing it. Right. Without seeing someone who's already been there and having the conversations about, again, the predatory types of actions, the resources that should be available to you ahead of time. And I think, Lorraine, you said something that was interesting, that there's really nothing stopping this type of activity. Right. It's just
Wild West.
The wild. I mean, it's almost as common sense. And you wonder if there could be. And so I'm a pivot.
Well,
no, go ahead, Lorraine. You're more.
Well, no, I mean, so as I said in the introduction, we're now coming back strong. So I think you both alluded to the fact that we, as a company, we decided we were going to fight back. We got sued because at the end of the day, we couldn't continue to operate the business. So we had several outstanding notes with several different toxic lenders, and I was sued personally by one as well as the company. So of course, when you get sued personally, I have assets, you don't want to take our assets, so now you have to settle. We settled with that one for significantly more than we actually owed. I mean, I think we borrowed maybe $100,000. Their settlement was like 1.5 million.
Wow.
Okay. And then along came the next, lawsuit from Yarde, as Joey mentioned before. We had, it wasn't Mark at the time. He had another firm representatives, because he wasn't actually operating the Brazil law firm back then, but he was involved in the initial, litigation with Yarde, and we lost initially. Like they won summary judgment in the U.S. District Court.
Wow.
And then we went to the New York Court of Appeals, and that's where Mark first argued the whole usury statute, and basically looking at the discount to market and all of the other fees and whatever else you pay to them to do the deal as interest, not just the interest to the note, right? And the New York State Court of Appeals, New York Court of Appeals agreed with him, and then it was elevated to New York State Court of Appeals, who agreed with him again, right? So now it's back. So that was really the landmark case right there. In that, now it's been determined that not just, so we may have a note, it might have a 12% interest rate on it, right? But then you have a securities purchase agreement, which has a conversion attached to it at 35%, 40% discount to market. So now the precedent is that discount can also be considered as interest on the note, pushing it way above the statutory 24.99%, for commercial loans of interest with New York State, I'm speaking of anyway, predominantly. But so now you're looking at close to 65 to 70% interest. So, those notes now, based on that determination, and we have to go through the process within the district courts, but could be void ab initio because they're not valid. The notes aren't valid because they're usurious.
There's too many flaws in the system. I'm just going to say that right now because you've got me just wanting to ask different types of questions, but I know Gus is in here and he's going to keep you straight to make sure you don't say anything you're not supposed to say. So
he already
he's already kind of put the stamp on that. Yeah. But we've got some phenomenal questions that are actually coming in from the community that's listening as well. So appreciate you guys for asking that. Senior Miss Val, what factors could contribute to withholding details from a filing, and could this be a positive strategy for raising clean capital? Well, that's a great question.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how to answer that question, because I mean, as a public company, you're required to disclose any material transaction. So, I don't think we are, as CEOs, allowed to withhold details of any particular transaction that we've done with toxic lenders, because they're material, and they affect the cap table and everything. So, I don't think that's an option for us. I mean, I can understand why he would ask that question, right? Because if we don't disclose we're doing those types of loans,
right, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Maybe we don't become targets or whatever. But yeah, no, unfortunately, fortunately, really, the whole point of being public is that we disclose everything. We disclose all of our material agreements. We're an open book. But that at the same time makes us predators and open to these types of transactions and further shorting of the stock. And, then you have the message boards, etc., that come into play. But yeah.
I think the key is just not to take on any toxic debt.
Right. I mean, of course, yeah.
The moral of the story, and hindsight 2020, right? Monday morning quarterbacking and everything is just don't do it.
Well, the good thing now is that, you asked the question before, when do you consult an attorney? So we know that we all have SEC attorneys. And as I said before, most of them don't really give you good advice when it comes to these types of predatory lending practices, right? Because it's like they're accepted on the OTC. It's like they're the norm. They're the norm, right? Or they have been the norm. But since, our case with Yarde and now the Basile law firm is aggressively, they've become experts in this field and they're aggressively going after these toxic lenders. I think the opportunity is there now for more CEOs to educate themselves out the gate, right? Not all lenders are bad, right? But I think you need to have somebody who specializes in these types of notes to, as Joey said before, really, drill down to the details so that they can really understand what they're getting themselves into, right? And I think the Basile law is doing that. The Basile law firm is doing that, out in the open now.
Yes.
And I think because of what they're doing, a lot of these predatory lenders are changing their practice, which is a great thing. So, what we're hoping we're going to be doing is changing the whole overall landscape.
I think what you are doing is changing the landscape. By just obviously having the cases, but I'm going to selfishly say as well, by having this discussion, right? Definitely getting this information out there, allowing folks to understand that there are predatory folks out there who are vying on these smaller organizations, smaller companies who need the money. And you made the point perfectly clear about payroll. All the other stuff can wait, but you got to take care of payroll day one, right? So when you have those types of constraints and those types of weights on the shoulders of the C-level executives, then you start looking at things that may look a little too glossy on the top and a little matte on the bottom, right? Those kinds of things. So
it's a balance, James, because you feel responsible because you have families that are dependent on you, right? You and then you have the shareholders, and so you need to borrow the money because you need to pay your employees. You don't want to dilute anymore because of shareholders, so you really it's such a fine balance. You know what I mean? And but I can speak for myself. I mean, the intentions were always good, right? The intentions were always to do the right thing for the company, for the shareholders, for the employees, right? But it's like the old adage: you can't keep everybody happy all the time, right? So somebody's going to be upset with you, right?
Oh, if you don't have haters out there, you're not winning sometimes. But
yeah. But that used to keep me up at night. That's what kept me up at night. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so difficult to keep everybody happy when you're running a small public company. Things that you don't think about when private companies, that you just don't have that kind of pressure.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because again, that's kind of one thing that gets assumed sometimes, but it's again good to hear someone like you two from that level sitting in that corner office, really just saying, look, we can't please everybody all the time. We got to be laser focused on the business deliverables and things of that nature. Let me bring up a couple of more comments, and because again, the audience is on fire tonight, so shouts out to them. Quint he's bashing me, giving me a hard time. He's talking about lining up so it fits James, because he knew he had a long comment here. Quint is saying, what was your experience and how did you deal with any bashing groups that would target your companies?
Yeah, well, I can sort of answer that. I mean, basically just don't read the message boards, stay away, stay away from all of that. No, reputation management is huge, and it's really, really difficult to avoid being the target of negativity with especially with toxic lenders. They do. I mean, they're out there all the time, making comments and doing whatever they're doing, and a lot of it is not necessarily directed towards the principles of the company or the company itself, but it's their own motivations, as far as call it market manipulation.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that the retail investors are the ones that ultimately get hurt the most, because these lenders they don't have to disclose the fact that they're dumping shares and shares at a discount into the market and affecting the stock price. So day traders and retail investors really get burned.
Let me pivot off of that right there, and it's a great segue. I like that phrase that you use, reputation management. I wrote that down, and specifically to you, Joey, as well. Let me ask you this, because again, you brought up this question kind of in the pre-planning. Being a defendant in a case against the toxic lenders, what is that roller coaster of emotions? What is that? What does that look like? Do you bring in other folks to assist with that, as you called it, the reputation management, as you're going through this ordeal as well?
Well, I mean, I would have loved to, but I was really tapped out and out of resources, so
Okay.
it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And but just to say that, yeah, I as Lorraine says, we're fighting back. I represented myself, a pro se defendant in the Southern District Federal Court in New York against a toxic lender. There was a 6-day bench trial, of which I did take open court testimony of the principal of this particular lending company, who actually admitted in open court that they are not registered broker dealers. And so it as far as my reputation goes, that was the whole thing. I mean, the court, the ruling in the lower courts, first of all, they got it wrong, but I did prevail in the sense that they were not able to pierce the court prevail, because I was also sued personally, so they really can't come after me for that reason. But they did hold me liable on 3 counts. And what does that mean? Well, that means that hurts my reputation. So I had said to Mark Basile at the Basile Law Firm, I had said to him, I said, if I don't prevail in this case, will you take on the appeal? And he said yes, because it's a slam dunk, because it's already following in the footsteps of Lorraine and her case against Yarde.
Awesome.
Just to clear my name, that's really what the point
I mean,
is.
and at the end of the day, that's what you have, right? I mean, that's what you go home with, right? That's what you rest your laurels on. You got to have that piece as well. That's appreciate you.
I think it's important. It's important, James, to make another comment. You have to have thick skin, right? Because you can't take it personally.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not. You have to stay. You have to communicate openly with your shareholders. You have to make sure that you're to the point of the other question before, that you're disclosing everything that's going on. Because once it's disclosed, I mean, it's out there. You have to just be as honest and open as you possibly can with your shareholders, right? But you're always going to have those stock bashers. You're always going to have the people that are putting FUD out there. You know what I mean? You can't help that because they're doing it for a reason. It's not personal, right? They're doing it because they want the price to fall so they can,
interesting point. Good point. Okay.
So you just have to have thick skin and keep plugging away. But it's, sometimes it's easy said than done, because as Joe said, your reputation is everything. And, sometimes it's hard to recover from these types of things.
Yeah.
The bashing, etc. But yeah.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up on the whole theory of and psychology of reputation management. I wrote that down here, so
I like that. I like that phrase as well.
Stay tuned. We'll see. Mr. Steve Worthy's asking a question. He says, "How do you identify toxic lenders based on your experience, or is it hard to recognize because they are veiled behind surface and shell companies?" Interesting question, Steve.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
How do you tell the sheep and how do you tell the wolf in the sheep's clothing, right? That's kind of what that is.
Well, now, I wasn't really involved in all that fundraising and doing all these securities purchase agreements, but it wasn't until, all the toxic lending lawsuits that I had to wrap my head around everything and really understand everything. And there's a bunch of notorious ones. There's a group of
usual suspects.
Yeah, that it's just, they're out there. And, not only do they operate under one name, but they have like 5 different companies that they, that they operate under. And, but I think that anyone that's considered a toxic lender is really anyone that's going to, that has the reputation of, doing a securities purchase agreement for convertible notes and then just converting, within 180 days. I mean, that's the due diligence that needs to be done in order to figure out if they're toxic or not.
And I think we spoke about in the planning session as well, James, is that, just the fact, because convertible debentures are used all the time and they're not all bad. Right, they're not all bad transactions, but when you have the convertible debenture along with the SPA, and you have all, I think that in itself, right there, those are 2 separate and independent types of transactions, and never the two shall meet. But when you do a deal, you present it with both of. I mean, it's okay it's easy for us to say now, right? But at the time, you don't even think about it, right? But when you present it with both documents, in a transaction with a significant discount to market, with all these default penalties, et cetera, the red flag should go up.
Gotcha.
Right. And then, as Joey said, do due diligence, search on the SEC site, see what types of transactions they've done. Because, Google's a wonderful thing. You can just search.
Everything's out there.
And you're right. It's very easy to find out about companies these days, and if it's not the company, it's the names of the principals, because they tend to, as Joey said, they'll shut down one operation and open up a new one under a different name. It's the same people. As a group that was notorious to that, we're not mentioning any names, of course, but
we're gonna stay at the 35,000 foot level.
But we won't.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna stay at the 35,000 feet level.
So you just have to do due diligence, but it starts with the paperwork, and it starts with just that in itself, right? If you look at a deal that way, it just at face value, that doesn't make sense from the get-go.
Gotcha.
Right? But
gotcha.
Again, and this is an education, right? Because nobody said to me, "Oh, well, you shouldn't sign a securities purchase agreement if you're signing because they're 2 different types of deals. One's equity and one's debt. What is this? Is this the debt deal? Is this an equity deal? Right? You know what I mean? but we don't think about it. But
Don't think about
now hopefully we can educate other people to kind of, the red flags to go up when they see those types of transactions coming.
That's the value right there.
And also, the SEC, I mean, they're so limited in their resources, and there's so many bad things that go on in Wall Street. So, where are they going to put their attention to? But, it has, the dealer registration, these toxic lenders are on their radar. They are being investigated by the SEC. The SEC has won summary judgment on, some of these toxic lenders already. And there's, few that, are, lawsuits against them right now that the SEC has filed. So it's happening. It's really only a matter.
Awesome.
The landscape certainly will change. I think the platforms are going to become way more regulated, and I don't necessarily know that it'll be cleaned up 100%, because you're always going to have the stock bashes. You can't really stop that, right? People, it's freedom of speech. People have an opinion and they like to share it, right? But certainly when it comes to the types of funding transactions that these OTC public companies can hope to see in the future. Hopefully maybe there won't be as many options available, right? Because it was, as I said before, it's easy money, but at least it will make these companies look at different, form a close group of shareholders that you have close relations with, that you can rely on maybe as your angels, right? And families and friends. You have to kind of think before you go into the public space now, how we're going to raise capital, because institutional lenders won't look at you, as Joey said, most of the companies are startups, right? So go into it knowing that you have resources, and if you don't, maybe it's not the right time to go public. And don't fall for the small talk. They'll tell you, oh, you need to go public to raise money because then you have liquidity. Everyone talks about
those Wall Street whizzes.
Don't Joey keeps wanting to say something.
It's the Wall Street whizzes.
As soon as you hear the word liquidity, turn and run a mile in the opposite direction. Because when someone tells you about liquidity, you know what the intentions are. Right? They want to sell.
Come on now.
They're thinking about selling quickly. They want to get their money back, right? They're not long-term investors. So,
man, see, I just let them go because they were talking about it. So, and I put the comment up, and they kept going. So, Senior Miss Val, I think they already addressed your question here, right? Tips to vet reputable lenders. What options would you suggest for someone that feels toxic lending is only an option? So, I believe Joy and Lorraine just went into a phenomenal statement about that. Rewind after we're done and make sure you take the notes, because they just went into really the full play-by-play in terms of that. And be careful, folks, when you're out there raising funds, raising capital, and who you're working with. Thank you guys all for these fantastic comments as well. Let me go into something here. There was another question that popped up that I would really want to ask you guys. Yeah, Justin, is there actually a list available to the public? How do we find these folks? Is it just going out? Well, you can't go out to Google and just say, "Show me toxic lenders."
No.
I mean, what's the code word? Hey, Gus, are you still online? Tell us what the code word is.
That's probably more
Edgar.
an attorney's question.
Yeah, do we go into Edgar and find out who these are?
You could probably just go on, the message boards of, I don't know, what is it, Yahoo or, Investor Hub, I don't know, and just search, toxic lenders, see what comes up. I'm sure there'll be a lot of that'll pop up.
Twit, Investor Hub, any of those platforms should give you some, because the shareholders that do invest in companies, the retail investors in companies, they're obviously as impacted as badly as we are as a business, right? So they're the ones that get hurt most. They don't have the ability to, because the toxic lenders, they make their money back plus and some, right? If they were to just look at the straight conversion, right, and just do business based, they would still make a great deal of money, and they don't have to be predatory. They're still making a significant return on their investment, right? And they don't have to be predatory. But unfortunately, these guys are just greedy,
Yeah,
and so.
Sorry, go ahead, Lorraine.
No, I'm just going to say to Joey's point, so the retail investors that are on these message boards will speak about them because as we've said before, everything's in our filings, so they know who we're doing business with, so they know who's really hurting the stock, and their reputations precede them now anyway. So people know, these usual suspects. We're hoping now that these usual suspects are going to go away because of what's happening with the cases with the Basile law firm and what the SEC is doing. But I think Joey's point's real good. Go on the message board, search for toxic lenders, and I'm sure a whole list will pop up.
Gus says there's a list right there.
Oh, hey, there is an iHub list. There you go. That's
okay. Shoot me a DM, brother, with this list right here. Yes, send a link. No, I'll put it in the description. Ask for and you shall receive, folks. We come in here with premium content. We got a Basile law firm and coming in with some secret information. We're gonna share it with the world. I love it. I love it.
But we didn't mention any names.
Didn't mention any names. No names are mentioned because we don't want to be in more litigation that we already are in. Couple more questions I wanted to get from the community that I see here, and then I've got kind of the last two that I wanted to definitely shut down with because I want to be cognizant of your time. I know, Joy, you are on the East Coast. Lorraine and I are still over here on the West Coast, and it's probably time for you. You said you wanted to shut down for the evening for sure.
Fine, I'm good.
Senior Ms. Val is coming with some greatness tonight. So, can a shareholder be a lender to a company, or is this a violation of any SEC rules or law? And is this even a question that you guys would know or answer, or would this be more from the litigation perspective?
Well, no. I mean, a lender. Oh, you mean as a debt, have a debt instrument with a company? Is that what she's meaning? Because in essence, when an investor gives a company money in an equity deal, they become a shareholder because they get given stock, right? As far as I know, I mean, Gus may be able to chime in, but I mean, I don't think there's any rules that say you can't have a note and have equity in a company. I don't think there's anything that's okay. Gus just came up with something.
I think he was talking about the list right here. So another way to just simply look for conversion discounts. I've tweeted the list before, but I'll tweet it again tomorrow. Oh, he's going to make us wait, 24 hours? Oh, this guy.
Look. He's on the East Coast as well. So
dude, the keys to the front door here. You know how to come into the studio. So, I'll just put that out there. No.
Yeah, but to answer the question, I don't believe there's any rules against a shareholder having a note with a company as well and being a lender. So, if you have shareholders that are funded to the company and they believe in the business and they believe in the fundamentals of the business, I believe they can also be lenders. And that's kind of what I was saying before, how do you raise capital when these guys have gone is form a strong community of supporters for the company that believe in the business and believe in what you're doing. And they hopefully can, be your lifeline in the future, as opposed to having to do these toxic deals.
Got you. Quint, great question. I'm just going to say even before I put it on the screen, but again, I think we already talked about this, but again, this is good to reiterate. Is the best investment to bite the bullet and line up legal representation prior to taking any form of financial assistance? Same could be said for board members with that type of experience.
I say yes.
Whenever possible.
I 100%. But the challenge is sometimes the money is not there to retain legal counsel. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg. What comes first? Sometimes you don't have the money. You need to raise capital to be able to retain legal counsel. So it just wherever possible, you should always seek advice, legal advice, and preferably somebody who specializes in these types of transactions. Because as I said before, we had SEC counsel, but they never really highlighted the pitfalls of those deals because they were considered normal in the marketplace.
Got you.
But they're not, but yes.
Got you. Gus is saying yes, they can, as long as they oblige with disclosure obligations, because it would be an interested transaction. So thank you, sir, for chiming in. Appreciate you for your assistance with these other hard hitting questions that we have from the community. I love my community, man. You guys are awesome. Let's round third, start heading towards home right here. Let me ask you guys this again, because the whole idea was to provide some insight, and we've definitely done that, but provide some best practices and some gotchas. But what's that advice to offer other CEOs to how they can try to avoid some of these similar situations that you two have been in? I mean, just top three things. And again, we may have already touched on them, but just kind of just to restate the obvious almost, I would say. And Lorraine, I'll start with you this time.
Okay, so I mean, we've stated some of the obvious before, but I mean, if you don't have the funds to be able to retain legal counsel, seek out other CEOs or former CEOs like Joey and myself and ask them if you have a particular deal that's been offered to you. Look at who else has done a deal with that particular lender. Call the CEOs of that company so you can actually find out how they handled the transaction or how that lender performed. Were they toxic at the time? Were they converting aggressively? So I think number one would be, talk to other companies CEOs who have done these types of transactions with these lenders, and see, to seek their advice.
Joy, what about you?
Well, as Lorraine also said earlier, that, sometimes you're just not in a position to be able to, be a public company. And, I think, anyone that's considering a reverse merge, buying a shell, needs to really understand how much capital is actually needed just to even keep the public side of the business alive, and, the filings and everything, and how much capital is needed overall, and where are they going to get the funding from. So I feel that if a company's already public and struggling with this, just to pull back a little bit, just pull back. I was in a race, like there was, I had to, so much pressure to build and grow and move on, not a lot of money. So you have to scale back a little bit and wait and be patient. It's better than getting involved with these toxic lenders, because it's just going to be, it's pretty much the end. Very hard to survive.
Yeah. Wow. Let me ask this. So again, we've talked about, kind of like I said in the monologue, we've talked about some of the good, the bad, the ugly, and being put into some unfortunate situations, but that's not the end of the story, right? That's not the last chapter, right? For you two, for sure. So what are you guys up to right now? What's next, and what are you guys up to right now? Let's do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I have a consulting company right now, and part of what I do is, work with other CEOs, help them, and typically it's after the fact, right? But I'm trying to, help them now before the fact. But recapitalize, restructure, deal with debt, different types of debt, restructure the companies so that they can actually, move forward and, clean up the cap table so they can go out and raise traditional money. So that's, I'm actually, using my experience, things that I did wrong in the past, because then you learn from your mistakes, to try and help other people going forward. So that's one of the things that I'm doing.
Awesome.
And, also, because we are fighting these toxic lenders now through what Mark Basile is doing with the Basile law firm, ultimately the goal is to take our public vehicle, file a Form 10, and bring an operating business into new operating business into maybe in the same space, maybe a different space, but I still feel responsible for the shareholders.
Makes sense. No.
So my goal would be to go through the process, clean the company up, and then bring another operating business in. So that's still on the horizon. That's still something that's kind of like in the books for us going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. Joy, what about you? What's going on in your world now?
In my world, well, it's funny because, I can't not do anything. I've always, been working. I founded my company when I was, 19 years old. I've never stopped. So, I've been offered, certain interesting positions and sit on boards and, all sorts of things. But to be honest with you, at this stage and, after everything that's happened and just trying to clean everything up and, resolve everything, get my reputation, back, squared away. Right now I'm just kind of in a sort of call it a retirement phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
With early retirement.
Yeah. So I have to get used to that though, because I'm, always doing something. So it's hard for me to say no, or just to, not get involved with a project of some sort.
You still got a lot of fuel left in the tank, right? You're not ready to just rock on the porch, right? Or, in the rocket chair. I love that, but that's good stuff. Listen, folks, what we talked about tonight was absolutely amazing. I don't know why my lower third isn't showing there. Oh my goodness, what's going on? Anyways, this conversation with Lorraine and Joey was beyond incredible. Hopefully you really got some value in terms of the conversation, folks. What to do, what not to do. Even if you do it, you see and you hear that there are now resources and people in place to help and to assist to make sure that you don't get maybe too far down that path of messing and dealing with toxic lending and things of that nature. So I will make sure I've got some of your contact information, social media handles and things of that nature. So just in case folks want to go into a little bit of a deeper, more intimate conversation with you, they can reach out to you from those locations. I will make sure that's it, like I say in the description for this session. But outside of that, I just want to give publicly and tell you guys both thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for being vulnerable, right? And sharing the stories because I know it's still somewhat raw in terms of a lot of things that you're going through, and to be open to educate folks who are coming, like I say, coming behind you. I think that's a true valuable lesson, and that's a true valuable learning piece that you can give to society. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, James, for having us. And yeah, we wish we had someone like us back in the day. So, it's a pleasure to be here and share some insight.
Thank you very much. You guys be well. You guys, if you found some value in this, please share it. And we will have some further conversations. Quint is asking, will the two ladies do this again? We'll see, right?
I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more to talk about. So yeah, why not?
Done. There it is, right? I nod and say yes. When women speak, I pay attention because I know better. We're going to end on that. Be good, you guys.